What is up, my friends? It is Sunday night's late night agenda, the last one of the week, and as always, it's a pleasure to be here with you. Tonight, I thought we'd have the conversation around Liverpool's situation. Have we turned the corner? It is a genuine, sincere question. It's not me trying to be a smartass or anything like that. I'm on the fence about it. I do think, yes, we have improved. There's no denying that. But I'm not sure if we're really back to ourselves. There were moments yesterday in that game where I felt like we were us. But most importantly, it was the right type of game for us. Brighton usually come and play football, so we do keep that in mind as well. But that's what we want to know tonight. The opening poll question is, are Liverpool back to ourselves? Have a vote on that one, and we'll check back in on a while. Right, we've got lots to get through tonight. We're going to be talking about the ranking of players and how much they're worth in the world at the minute. Who is the top 10? We'll be giving you some quotes from Jan DIOMANDE around the links to him in Liverpool. We'll be talking with about Virgil van Dijk's, comments around Mohamed Salah, Milos Kerkez. We'll discuss what Tony Cascarino's had to say about Dominic Szoboszlai being up at Steven Gerrard's level, and of course we will have lots to talk about as well with Mohamed Salah and his future. Appreciate you all being here with me though. It was a nice night last night. It was good to go to bed after a 3-0 victory and booking our place safely into the 5th round. I know Macca, I think it was, thought we were in the quarterfinals. Not quite yet, my friend. One more round to go, and of course the draw's tomorrow. In case you were wondering, I did think initially the draw was tonight, but no, it is tomorrow after the final game of the FA Cup 4th round. Leona, how are we, mate? Just wanted to say I love this community. Thank you so much, Leona. Really appreciate your support as always, my friend. And thank you for being with us as a member for 7 months. So, chat, what are we saying? On the fence, you made your feelings pretty clear about a mere 2 minutes ago. I again, don't know what that's in relation to, Wayne. So, I am on the fence. I'm on the fence as to whether this is us turning it around or not. Now, I'm not talking about the manager here. We can talk about the manager on a side, but the genuine feeling for me is, have we turned the corner? Is this the start of us starting to be a bit more like ourselves? Because if you look back at the results, you know, going back to the Sunderland win away, it wasn't picture perfect, but it was a good away win. Even looking at the goals, we've conceded 3, I think, in our last 5. So there are some signs that we are starting to play with a bit more confidence. Mohamed Salah looks a lot more happy. And again, it's not that difficult to understand. Liverpool do well. Liverpool fan feels happier. But I don't know if this is a false dawn or this is us really back. And that's what I mean. It's a genuine, sincere question. I'm unsure as to where we're at with it. So I want to know how you're all feeling. I don't think we played good yesterday, said Fox. We were playing better than Brighton. But if Ali did make those crazy saves, who knows? Yeah, that is fair. I mean, certainly there were times yesterday where Brighton got into good positions and didn't have their shooting boots on. There was a comment from one of the journalists, or a piece from one of the journalists. I just want to read you a little bit out. It said, there was no evidence of Brighton not performing for their under-pressure manager, but the lack of cutting edge was glaring, as was the case when visiting teams here in the Premier League. Now, the reason I bring that up and address what you said there is, it's absolutely fair to say that Brighton created chances. But one thing that we've talked about, and maybe derided the manager about a little bit, has been him saying that we've been unlucky on occasion. So is this a case of us starting to get a little bit more of the rub of the green? And some of the luck he's talking about being missing before is maybe coming our way. Some chances being missed that, you know, were being converted a few months ago. I don't know, and I don't have all the answers. This is me genuinely just putting it out there for a conversation with our community. Wolski said, really great performance, but I'm still very unsure on what to think. There has to be another few good performances for me to feel comfortable. Love to see them play some good football, though. Skater Hardy said, I'm not convinced. Seeing this before after cup games this season, play well against Frankfurt, Madrid, Marseille, to name a few, only to play utter crap afterwards. I'm just not convinced at all. And I totally understand that, mate. I do. I understand where you're coming from. And like I said, this is a sincere question, not me trying to push a narrative or anything like that. We have a game coming up in 8 days, which I think will be a good measuring stick of where we are. Nottingham Forest away, fighting relegation, a team that have caused us problems in recent history. So, there'll be no hiding place out there next Sunday. They have a midweek fixture and they have a playoff in the Europa League that we don't have to worry about. We have a full 8 days to get there. So I'm sure we're going to be showing up in good shape. Plenty of time for the lads to work on things on the training ground. And we've started to see the fruits of some of the change of some set pieces that we've discussed. And again, that's very welcome. But again, I agree. I'm not for 1 second coming on here to say to you everything is better. It is a true question because I'm unsure. I want to think we're getting better. I want to think we're turning a corner, but as many of you have pointed out, there's been false dawns before, and I do take into account that ultimately this has been a victory over a poor Newcastle, a victory over Sunderland away, which, let's be honest, nobody else has done it this season, but you would always expect Liverpool to go up and get a result from a newly promoted side. And on top of that, we played a team in the FA Cup in Brighton that had made many changes, but that also play a brand of football that is suiting to the way Arna wants to play. They don't sit back and defend deep. So that played into our favour as well. So I'm mindful of all of these things. But like I said to you before, I don't know sometimes if I'm too far gone to the far way, that I'm missing things that I should be given credit for. And I'm open to everything. I think we back your players and manager on the same frame. Everybody and fans are not happy, but I think we'll be good. Kirkes was my man of the match yesterday, plus he offers more down the left side than Gakpo does, said LFC Spectre. Well, he was your Anfield Agenda man of the match yesterday. He got about 40% of the vote, so certainly most people agreeing with your assessment there. I say most people, 40% isn't most, but the majority. Let's go with the majority. James said, hey Craig, love the channel, keep up the hard work. Thank you, my man, appreciate you. So on our poll question, don't forget to vote if you haven't. We're asking, do you think the Reds are back to our old selves, or do you think maybe there's a little bit more pain to go? So while we're talking about it, I want to just bring up Mohamed Salah for a second, because James Pearce posted today to say Mohamed Salah has adapted since returning from the AFCON. He's winning possession more frequently and creating more. It was telling that Slot praised his work off the ball against Brighton. If this is the long goodbye, he looks determined to sign off with a bang. And that's the question that I'm wondering. Is this the start of the long goodbye? Because I mentioned it on the podcast that we just finished recording with Chris and Connor, that for me, and I think I said it to you guys in the watch along yesterday, for me this feels like Mohamed Salah playing with the freedom of maybe knowing he's made up his mind on his future and just wants to enjoy the remaining months that he has at Liverpool. Now, I've got nothing to back this up with regards to information. It's just a gut feeling I have based off his body language yesterday and, the way he was interacting with the cop, and really just felt like he wanted to soak everything in. So that's kind of where my head's at. And look, we all know in life, if you feel like there's a little bit less pressure on your shoulders or a little bit less stress in your life, you tend to be more relaxed and a little bit happier. And that's certainly what I'm seeing with Mo at the minute. Ian said exactly what I meant about unselfish side of Mo. His overall performance is great when he's not laser focused on scoring. Yeah, you think he's got 6 goal contributions in his last 6 games, but he just looks to be more involved in games recently. Still, could do with a few more goals if we're being honest about it, but he certainly looks like he's contributing a little bit more now, and he's building relationships out there on the pitch, or at least forming better relationships out there on the pitch with some of the newer players. JCC04F said, as long as we're able to be dominated like we were for all but 30 minutes of the City game, I'm not falling for it. Well, there's a point I wanted to bring up on that actually about possession. And this is what my gripe with Arna has been over time, in that he says one thing, but our football is something else. So he talks about wanting to dominate possession and have more of the ball. Well, we had less possession in that game yesterday. And in the opening 10 minutes or so, we had a lot less possession. So I don't feel we are this team that, keeps the ball in swarms team in the way that he likes to portray he wants us to play. But yesterday, it might have been confidence thing. It might have been the fact that, everything fell in our favour. But it was the first time this season I've really enjoyed the whole evening, the whole game. It really just felt like there was no stress. It was a nice escape. It was exactly what I want as a football fan, to see your team out there doing well, getting a good result, no drama at the end, and everybody going home happy. That's Bit of simplistic, but, you know, it was a nice feeling. Stefan Gordon said, would love to see a pacey and skillful attacker that can take players on. If not, we must use Rio. Riding the Storm said, much better than we have been, but nowhere near where we could be. And that's fair. You know, if you're looking at the calibre of players that are in this squad, there's certainly more to come. And there certainly should be plenty of good attacking, energetic football there. You know, we're not an old team either. It's important we keep account of that. Yes, we do have Mohamed Salah and Virgil van Dijk, Alisson Becker, perhaps at the tail ends, but you look at some of the quality we have, and a lot of them are very young footballers. Szoboszlai is only coming in towards his prime now. Ryan Gravenberch hasn't even gotten into his prime. That's before we talk about the likes of Florian Wirtz, Ugo Ekitike. Yeah, there is a lot to be optimistic about there for the future. 60s Red said, possession is good if it's positive forward momentum. If it's sideways pass around, it's just a waste of time. Yeah, I agree. You know, possession, if you want to keep possession, you best be doing something with the ball. And sometimes no harm having possession if you're in a lead, as an example. You know, we've seen out games recently, like against Sunderland. I thought we managed I think 7 minutes, if my memory's right, of stoppage time quite well. And we kept the ball more. And yes, if you don't need to force the issue in the game, keeping the ball, moving the ball, tiring out the opposition, there's nothing wrong with that. But it's frustrated us at times this season where we're playing a low block and we're still doing it. We're moving the ball slowly side to side. And yeah, that has been frustrating for sure. David said, hi Craig, did you see Rio's goal for the 21s today? Yes, it was brilliant. I mean, the goal that he scored that was ruled out for the senior team was very good, but the goal that he scored for the 21s against, I think, West Brom today was super. Like, really good. Right on the edge of the 18-yard box, cut inside, buried it into the top corner. Fantastic goal from him. And yeah, hopefully, again, we talk about young positives and up-and-coming players. Hopefully we see Rio Ngamoa get more minutes as the season progresses. Christine van der Mera said, Rio played 75 minutes in the 21s today. If he's doing this regularly, that's why he's not being played fully in the senior team. Can't play twice in 2 days. He scored as well. Yeah, he did. I think Will Wright got on the score sheet, if I'm not mistaken, as well. Trey Neone got some assist, I think, if again I'm not mistaken. Ronka said Neone scored and assisted. There you go. I didn't know he'd scored. I knew he'd had an assist. So, yeah, good signs there for the youngsters. But, you know, it's a big difference between playing for the 21s and, you know, playing regularly for the first team. Have you seen the Maresca City news? I haven't, Jake. No, I haven't, mate. Could you fill me in? We've spoken quite a bit on the channel over the last couple of weeks about the fact that Maresca is the most likely to fill the big shoes that would be vacated by Guardiola if he leaves, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if something's come out. We know he's had 3 meetings, I think, already, or 3 conversations with Manchester City. David said, I think has listened to the fans outside of the club and thought I need to change the style before I'll lose my job. It's too early to say we've turned a corner. Only time will tell. Yeah. I mean, look, it's definitely too early to say categorically we've turned a corner. No argument for me whatsoever on that. But I don't want to be afraid of giving praise on here either. Because, you know, there's been plenty of dark times for us this season where we've been frustrated and annoyed and angry. And it's been nice to have a couple of wins in a row. So starting to feel a little bit less stressed as a Liverpool fan. And, you know, there was a time there where we were on this run that it was just so demoralising. But now, since Mo went to the AFCON, come back, things look like they've settled on a little bit there. Wirtz has gone from strength to strength. Milos Kerkez, as you guys rightly said, was nothing short of brilliant against Brighton. And hopefully that's the start of him showing that he has now settled in and that position is his. The Emir said if Rio was Dutch, he'd be playing every game. I don't know, man. I don't know. We were talking about the Cody Gakpo situation quite a bit in the podcast tonight, actually, and I don't want to ruin the moment in it, but I have a theory as to why Cody Gakpo is getting a bit more grief this season than perhaps he was in seasons gone by. Flo Witt said Gakpo has improved quite a lot recently. He didn't cut inside every time. It's going to be a huge battle for DIOMANDE in the summer. I hope he chooses us, said Brian Box. Well, on DIOMANDE, mate, let me just give you some quotes from him. So Yan DIOMANDE speaking to Bild, clarifying his comments on Liverpool being his dream club. Now, we know there are many clubs, Bayern Munich and others, looking at Yan DIOMANDE. Liverpool is certainly keeping tabs as well, but this is what he had to say. People made it out to be my dream club, but first and foremost, it's my dad's favourite club. It was always his great wish to see me there someday because he loves the atmosphere at Anfield. He always raved about Steven Gerrard. I was too young to see him play. We didn't even have a TV at home for a long time. I have a lot of respect for Liverpool, but my dream club right now is Leipzig. And look, I understand him saying his dream club right now is Leipzig. That's where he's playing his football. But this kid has all the top clubs in Europe really, really interested. Fabrizio Romano said Bayern and Premier League top clubs will be in a battle to sign Yan Diomande in the summer. Leipzig yet to decide on a final price tag, but Bayern are keen. Vince and company also appreciates Diomande. Premier League clubs also very keen. So yeah, do let us know what you think about that. Do you think Liverpool win the race for a signature? I haven't really watched too much of him playing for Leipzig, so yeah, I'm a bit late to the party on Yan Diomande. So here's the thing you were talking about with Fabrizio Romano and Maresca. He said, no talks between Spurs and Enzo Maresca so far, despite recent links. Understand Maresca remains the clear leading candidate to be the next Manchester City head coach when and if Pep Guardiola decides to leave. Again, no real surprise there. We've been talking about this for quite a while, that Maresca was the leading candidate if Guardiola does step down. But I guess the big question here is for Manchester City, will the timings line up? Because Maresca's not going to want to stay at a football that long. You could see him maybe seeing out the end of this season, but after that, he's not going to want to sit somewhere for a year waiting for Pep Guardiola's contract to be up. So it'll be interesting to see if there is any chatter about Guardiola's future, because, you know, if it's a year down the line, they're going to have to look at some other candidates, because I'd imagine Maresca would have gone into a job at that point. Damon said, Craig, do you think the upper management had a hand in Slot changing his tactics and performances? Not on the performance side of things, but someone mentioned something to me earlier on, and it's kind of stuck in my head, so I'm not going to take the credit for this being my idea. I think it was Connor, if I'm not mistaken. But he spoke about the language that Slot has used this week in press conferences, being a little bit more upbeat than perhaps in the past. A little few less comparisons to Jurgen, and a little few less digs about the times we were in the Europa League and stuff like that. That's the type of stuff that just not going to sit well with fans. You know, trying to compare yourself with Jurgen or your situation with Jurgen's, that was something that I think would have put him on a hiding to nothing. So I wonder, has maybe somebody had a word in his ear and said, look, just stick to what's going on right now. That's, I mean, this is absolutely a comment I can't get on board with, mate. So Sonny610 said, we should cash in on Dom this summer to balance the books after last year's spree and give them some financial stability for the next few years. Not a hope for me, mate. Not a hope. Cash in on Jones, cash in on somebody else, but Dominic Szoboszlai, he should be tied down to Liverpool for as long as possible. He is playing unbelievably well. You know, he's starting to get on the score sheet more and more. And there's been some crazy comparisons with him and Steven Gerrard. I mean, Tony Cascarino today or recently said, is Szoboszlai up with Steven Gerrard's standard? I think they're pretty close. Now, for me, he's got a way to go before he gets to Steven Gerrard's standard. But Dominic Szoboszlai doesn't want to be judged to Steven Gerrard's standard, and rightly so. He's his own man. But I dare say, mate, you're on your own with thinking. Look, personally, I don't give a shite about balancing the books. That's not my problem as a fan. And it's about bleeding time. Liverpool spent some money on the market in the way that we did last summer. You know, we've been a bit too miserly in that department for many years. So, you know, we brought in a load of money as well. So we're in a decent financial position. But yet, I don't think you're going to get many takers to the idea of selling one of our best players. Craig, do you think Rio should get in the 11? I think you mean when Mo isn't playing or when Mo goes. Look, Rio, I hope that yesterday again showed Arna that he can start to rely on Rio. Because that was almost the perfect situation. You're 3-0 up. You've got, a cup game. You can bring some players off, put Rio into an environment where there's no real pressure on him. But, the team's in a confident mood. The fans are absolutely up for it. Anfield's bouncing. And you put him in there for the 10 or 15 minutes. And we've seen the amount of times that he created opportunities, got himself a goal that was ruled out, probably incorrectly ruled out as well. No VAR in the game, obviously, so couldn't check back on it. But I hope that once again Arna's seen, okay, I can use this kid. I can put him into that environment, and showed up at Newcastle, got us a winner there, and yesterday came on and had an impact on the game in a good way. Slot talking like that and wearing club gear just seems fake now, in my opinion. Said someone's missing toe. On the club gear thing, I'm putting down a resurgence to that, by the way. That's how strong I feel about Arna wearing club stuff. Have you noticed that recently? He's been wearing the Liverpool gear on the sideline and the results have started to turn. So my point on Navy could have something to it. Pasky said he hasn't dismissed the rumours of Real Madrid being his dream move. If this continues, we will be witnessing another contract saga. If players dream of somewhere else, then leave. I understand your point on that, but I feel very confident he signs a new deal. Again, not trying to sit here to say I have information or anything that you don't. I don't. But my reading of his body language and the vibe from Dom is that he's happy here. And he understands he's at a great club. And he's still relatively young, don't forget. Still plenty of time in his career. I know his national team manager came out and made the comments that he made. And if you haven't seen what he said, he basically said Dominic Szoboszlai grew up dreaming about playing for Real Madrid. But he's a potential Liverpool captain in the making. And, could this be, the start of the negotiation? Because we've seen some figures publicly recently as well, about 300 grand being mentioned. And now we're starting to see, his national team manager talking about his dream. But Liverpool should be moving heaven and earth, I think, to get Dom tied down to a new deal. And dare say if Andy Robertson moves on, give him the vice captaincy and then maybe the captaincy when Virgil's contract is up in 2027. But I certainly hope to God we don't lose him. Like, there isn't really an amount of money that would make me happy with losing Dom. He is a difference maker. Actually, while we're talking about rankings, there was a post earlier on from Score 90, and they said top 5 central midfielders according to Score 90. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this. So here's the top 5. In 5th place, Paris Saint-Germain's João Neves. In 4th place, Newcastle's Bruno Guimaraes. 3rd place on the list, Dominic Szoboszlai of Liverpool. 2nd place, Pedri of Barcelona. And 1st place, Declan Rice of Arsenal. What do we think to that? Do we agree with that list? Do we think Dom should be higher, lower? Do we think Rice should be at the top? Really interested to know your thoughts on that ranking there. Craig, if you could spend the day with any Liverpool player, who would it be? Robbo. Yeah, I love Andy Robertson's sense of humour. And probably Robbo. It would have always been Bobby Firmino. But probably Andy Robertson. After Robertson, depending on what type of day I want. If I want a nice day, some good food, maybe Alisson, because we know how handy he is on the grill. We know he's quite accustomed to a bit of barbecuing. But Hugo Ekitike, that'd be a fun day as well. But if I want to batshit crazy, Milos Kerkez. I mean, you could imagine a day of Milos Kerkez would be fun, right? I probably wouldn't have the energy to keep up, but it'd be a fun day. Jaden said the under-18 and academy boys win today. And Trey scored. Rio and Trey scored. Thank you, sir. Mark said PGMOL after a mistake. There's been another fuck up. I don't know what that means, Mark. You're going to have to give me some context on that one, mate. Sorry. Mo must have had his Weetabix yesterday. Wow, I love him tapping the badge too. Found it quite emotional. But do you think do you agree with my theory that Mo might have made his decision that he's going mentally, and that's why he's kind of savouring every moment and taking in every second, every positive, touching the badge, scoring, standing in front of the cop. It just feels to me like this might be the start of the long goodbye, to use James Pearce's quote. Mario said Pedri and Dom are better than Rice. Come on, Pedri and Dom is a debate to be had. 100% both very good. I have to say, I haven't really kept tabs of Barca too much this season, so I haven't really been watching Pedri's impact. But yeah, Declan Rice being at the top of the list. I don't know if this is my, not wanting to give Arsenal too much credit side coming out, but it just doesn't feel. It just feels, I don't know. I've seen Arsenal fans try to say he's better than Gerrard. They can fuck right off with that nonsense, but he's a good player. But you know what he is? He is a perfect encapsulation of Mikel Arteta's Arsenal. Right down from the style of play, the combative nature of it, a little bit reserved almost on occasion, not too attack-minded. I think he's the poster boy for Arteta's brand of football. LFC Spectre said, I personally think Cole Palmer is one of the most overrated players in the world. Very inconsistent. When he does, the media make it his best in the world. I agree. You said, not for me, especially Declan Rice. I 100% agree on the Cole Palmer stuff. I don't get it. I don't get how he is doing as well in the media as he is. So, just for a bit of context, Gold side have transfer marked top 10 most valuable football players in the world. And Cole Palmer is on the same price tag as Jamal Musiala, Michael Olise, Bukayo Saka, all at 130 million euro. Sorry, Cole Palmer's a bit less, 120 million euro, my apologies. So he's 10th on the list. Number 1, Lamine Yamal, they value at 200 million euro. Number 2, Erling Haaland, same price. Mbappe, again, number 3, same price. Number 4, Jude Bellingham, 160 million euro. Now, on that, how are we at that point? Where Jude Bellingham's now all of a sudden worth 160 million euro. Because Real Madrid signed him, and I wouldn't say he's doubled in value or even close to doubled in value since he's gone there. I mean, really? I find that list a bit crazy. And then Vinicius Jr., 5th on the list, 150 million euro. Number 6, Pedri, 140 million euro. Well, I tell you what, if I had 150 million euro to spend, I would certainly be spending that money on Pedri or Michael Olise, even Jamal Musiala, over the likes of Cole Palmer or Vinicius Jr. Stephen said, Rice is a really good player, but my God, he's so vanilla, no personality in his game. That's what I said. He's the perfect poster boy for the Mikel Arteta Arsenal team. He really just feels like he is a perfect encapsulation of Arsenal under Arteta. Right, keep voting. When we get to 1,500 votes, we will knock this one on the head. But we're asking, do you think the Reds are back to our old selves? Yes, no, or unsure? Craig, what do you think about Morgan Rogers links for next summer? I don't believe them. Like, where do we play him if we bring him in? Genuinely. We had a long discussion on the pod tonight about Curtis Jones' future and what we think happens there. And I can see a world where Liverpool maybe, and I've said this to you guys for months, move on a central midfielder to make way for a number 6 to come in. But on the Morgan Rogers stuff, for the price you'd have to pay for him, where are you going to utilise him? Unless we do change systems perhaps and aren't playing with the likes of wingers in the past, the way we played them, I don't know. But he's a great player, but something doesn't feel likely about it to me. Could be wrong though. Lucas Phillips, how are you? Feel like Salah's too obsessed with records and trophies. I think he'll see it his contract. Can see your thinking though. So I always try to keep track, Lucas, of the media and the way they're writing about situations as well. And it does, to me, feel like not that there's an acceptance from some of the media around Liverpool, but there's certainly more of an openness to the possibility of this being a summer where he moves on. There was some stories the other day saying that the club are even open to Al Ittihad coming in to make an offer this summer. And if you look at it, and remove the emotion from it, which is what Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes are supposed to do. 400 grand a week, a potential 30 to 50 million quid transfer fee for a player that's 34. I can understand the club considering it if it was something that was maybe brought to their attention by Mohamed Salah and his representatives. I'm not saying the club are looking to push him out, but I can absolutely see a world where Hughes or Edwards looks at it and thinks, we could do a lot with that money. We could do a lot with the transfer fee and the wages off the books. Between the transfer fee, let's say, and the wages, you're talking, if it was a 40 million quid fee, 60 million quid between what's saved in wages and what you get in a transfer fee versus letting them go for free in a year's time. So, who knows? And look, the final decision should and probably will be with Mohamed Salah, but my own guesstimation is that this could be the summer where he goes. The point is, stop being biased. Rice is brilliant. I haven't said he wasn't brilliant. I think Declan Rice is a wonderful footballer. I just don't think he's the best midfielder in Europe. That's my honest opinion on it. I just think he's a really good player. He would get into most teams, but I just don't think of him as the best midfielder in Europe. And that's my honest view on it. It's nothing to do with being biased or not. He does a lot of things very, very good. But again, let's remember, Arsenal haven't won anything. Yeah, now they will, more likely this year. But we're talking about a player who's won fuck all. So, I find it very difficult to start throwing him in there with the Steven Gerrards, the Frank Lampards of this world just yet. Jaden said, Craig, can I have your opinion on this? Do you think Liverpool Academy is producing good local talent for the future and not just bringing players in like Rio? Look, the wet dream for a football club is to produce talent. With the underage teams that can go through to the first team. But we've talked about this on a few occasions, Jaden. The problem is that step from under 21 or under 18 football to the first team. It's quite steep. And this is why I'm more open to the multi-club model and why I'm a little bit frustrated that we haven't, seen FSG buy another club. Because that could be a perfect transition for these players. So just as an example, let's say Liverpool's owners bought Malaga. Just throwing a name out there. Then we have an outlet that not only can you bring South American players in and maybe ease them into European football a little bit, but we also have an outlet where we could send young players from Liverpool to get good level football. Good level football and help bridge the gap between, going from underage football straight into Liverpool's first team. And also, if it doesn't work out, they're still gaining experience of senior first team football. And we've seen from Manchester City and Chelsea how beneficial that can be from a financial standpoint. So, to get back to your question, yes, we're producing talent, but will this talent see a pathway through to the first team? So, young Abe at the minute, there's loads of talk that he's going to be going. We banged a hat-trick this week again for the under-18s, 15 years of age, and there's already talk that Manchester City and others could be, Arsenal thinks names in the mix as well, about to nab him. So, yeah, really difficult one. Certainly worth keeping an eye on some of those players, but I think that's why I'm a little bit anxious about Liverpool going into the multi-club model, because I think this would give us a bit more breathing room there. And like I've said, it would be a nice way to top up the old funds as well if needs be. If a player goes, let's say, to the sister club, doesn't really get to the level we need, but still, does enough to maybe get a move elsewhere and it's profitable for the club. Jeff Porter said, Rice may be a good player, but he's not a mark in the boots of Gerrard, Lampard, Scholes or De Bruyne. And that is my point. That's what we're talking about here, like the very creme de la creme of Premier League midfielders over the years. And I just don't think he's up there. I really don't. Not just yet. And if he delivers Arsenal some league titles, Champions League, pushes on perhaps. And I'm not saying you have to just win stuff to be classed as a good player, because there's been plenty of good players who've won nothing in their career. But I think there's a willingness and a fondness for London clubs to have just too much hype around some players. Just my genuine feelings on it. With Pep leaving Man City, does he know the investigation results and is jumping ship? The end zone replacement doesn't make sense to me. I mean, look, I can't answer that question honestly because I don't know the answer. But I'd be a liar if I said I haven't mulled over exactly what you've said in my head and wondered out loud, was it what he's doing? But truth is, I don't know, mate. I haven't got a clue. He's 1 year left on his contract. He's earned the right to make his own decision, but I think the whole of football is kind of getting a little bit bored now and frustrated with the whole situation with the Manchester City case. It's just gone on way too long. Here was an interesting one from somebody sent this tweet into our Discord, and I wanted to just bring it up because I found it quite interesting. So it's from an account called Insensible CFC, and it said, I looked it up and David Raya faced 0 shots on target in 5 out of his 13 clean sheets this season. For the 8 clean sheets where he actually had to do something, he faced 1 shot on target in 7 of them. Imagine making 7 saves and getting 12 clean sheets for it. Now, I haven't had a chance to check whether those numbers are actually legit, but if they are, it just speaks to how defensively minded Arteta is. If his goalkeeper has had to deal with 7 saves for 12 clean sheets, he's hardly having to have worldies there. So it's an interesting bit of information, but like I said, I have to look into the numbers to see if they are legit. Right, we've got our poll votes. So we asked, do you think the Reds are back to ourselves? 17% said yes, which is the least voted for answer. Unsure, 40%, and no, 43%. Thank you sincerely to everyone that did take the time to vote on it. I want to ask you a question now about Salah. No, actually, you know what? I want to talk about Dom. I want to move on and talk about Dom. So I want to ask, will Dom sign a new deal? I genuinely feel that he will. I've no information other than the few bits and pieces that have been out in the public to say that Liverpool have held exploratory talks around the possibility of it. But I want to know what you guys think. Will Dominic Szoboszlai sign a new deal at Liverpool Football Club? I hope he does. I really, really, really hope he does, because we're starting to see now exactly what the hype was around Dom and why Liverpool brought him in. Riding the Storm, how are you, sir? Said, good evening, Craig. I know you must get lots of emails, but I really think we need to have a chat about making mental health more easier to open up. Could really make a difference together. As I've said before, Connor filters through the emails for me. I know this sounds a bit silly, but I don't have access to our email accounts. I don't have access to our social media accounts, and it's all by design. But you are right. I do want to have a proper chat about mental health with you, but it needs to be in the right context and at the right time. And I feel like this is probably a conversation we should have in the summer when there's a little bit more breathing room for a conversation with a little bit less pressure with the footy and stuff. So definitely happy to have that conversation, as I've said to you before. But at the minute, I just don't have time to bless myself. Honestly, it's crazy here at my house at the minute. We've got still trying to get the office sorted out to make the move in there. I've had some health issues that I haven't really spoken about publicly that I've been trying to work on. But I haven't forgotten, I promise you. You know how big mental health is to me and what it means to me. So, yeah, we will do that, though. I promise you, we will get there. Right, where are we at? Hope he signs a new deal, but right now I'm unsure because a Dom new deal probably depends on how much we get European football, and Dom is going to want Champions League. Look, I think everybody will want Champions League. I feel like Virgil certainly wouldn't want his potential last season with us not to be in the Champions League. So Alisson, I'm sure the same. So I think Champions League football is something everybody wants. Fans, players, coaches, and probably expects. Now, I think we'll get it at this point. I do. The next 4 games are going to be really important for us in this factor. We've got 4, what looks like on paper, winnable games. Nottingham Forest away, West Ham at home, Wolves away, and Spurs at home. They're games you would be expecting points from. So if we've turned the corner, well, we'll find out over the next couple of weeks. Or a couple of months, I should say, excuse me. The Emir said, would Trent have stayed if Klopp was manager still? I'm going to say yes. But again, it's just an opinion. It's a really interesting question. And I think Jurgen leaving certainly was a blow to Trent, because you've seen what Jurgen meant to Trent. He's spoken about it many, many times. So I feel that the likelihood of him staying would have increased. But I will never understand why he made the move. I will never understand it. I'll never think it's the right move for him. I will never feel it's something he should have done. I think when he looks back in his career all in, it won't have worked out for him at Real Madrid, and he'll end up somewhere else, and it won't be Liverpool, and it won't feel the same to him. But it's his career, like I've always said, and it's his choice to take those risks. Salah, Chiesa and Curtis Jones will be gone in the summer unless Slot is sacked. Well, what do we think happens? We'll leave the poll running on Dom, but what do you think happens with Curtis Jones? Connor thinks we might sell him this summer, or he leaves on a free. Connor's not very confident Curtis Jones signs a new deal. If we remove the emotion of him being a Scouser from the conversation, he's a great squad player to have. But will Curtis Jones ever be somebody that is a regular fixture in the starting 11 with what's at the club now? I don't think so, if the truth be told. Like, I always felt McAllister would probably be the more likely one to be moved on or to be sold. But this is going to be a big summer for Curtis Jones, because Liverpool won't want to let him go for nothing. If you can't agree terms with him in a new deal, a sale is probably on the cards. Now, question is, and we tried to discuss this on the podcast, where could you see Curtis Jones going, and what type of price tag do you think Liverpool could get for him? 60s Red said, I think Jones wants out. Well, this week alone, didn't he say he'd play anywhere for the club, for the manager? Loves the club, play left back, centre forward, centre back, anywhere. So I don't know if there has been words between him and Aaron. I haven't got a clue. I know it's been speculated about, but like I said, I really don't know the answer to that. Here's where I'm going to be honest. If he wasn't Scouse, I wouldn't lose a minute's sleep if we got rid of him, because I could understand why, from a playing perspective. But there is something about having a local person in that squad and team and group, and I think it's important to have that connection, to have that Scouse representation out there. Now, of course, you have to be good enough. But I don't know. It'll be weird if that's the case, because like my adult life supporting Liverpool, there's always been a homegrown connection there. Somebody, a local hero, a Carragher, a Gerrard, a Robbie Fowler, somebody. LFC Spectre said, I would rather keep Jones because I have sense Maka will more likely want to move to Spain. Well, so far tonight we've talked about Maka wanting to go to Spain, Szoboszlai maybe wanting to go to Spain. We can't lose all of them. So, something may have to give. I've always thought, because he's a little bit older, McAllister might be the one. But, let's see what happens this summer with Curtis Jones. Price-wise, I think somebody in the chat said there, with a year left, Keane said maybe 30 to 40 million. That feels about right. that does feel about right with a year left and the fact that he's homegrown. Tyne said Jones has offered more than McAllister this year with less minutes. I think that's fair. I think that's fair, mate. This hasn't been Alexis McAllister's best season with us. I thought he played well yesterday, but I understand the point you're making and where you're coming from. Over the course of the longevity of their careers, look, there's no denying McAllister's been a better player, but I think what you said makes sense. This season, I've certainly seen more of a driving force from Curtis Jones than Alexis McAllister. If Alonso was in, he would keep Jones because of the Scouser aspect. I'd sell McAllister over Jones in an instant, said JCC04F. I think either Jones or Maka will be gone next season, said Feel Like Jerome. We need better squad depth next season, so better keep most of the players strengthened, said AJ. We definitely need more squad depth, bro. No argument on that whatsoever. Squad depth has been threadbare and nowhere near good enough this season. Jim said, more versatile too. Good luck playing Maka at right back. Yeah, and that's a really good point, Jim. Like, there is something to be said for a versatile player. You know, a Joe Gomez across the back or a Curtis Jones that can play in multiple positions. And that, you know, having that in a squad, you know, that utility man like a James Milner or a Jorginho Wijnaldum, it makes a huge difference. But you also have to balance that, I guess, with trying to keep the player happy minutes-wise. And is he suffering from a little bit of that, you know, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain syndrome, as Chris called it, where he never really nails down a position that's his own, but would be, you know, a very welcome addition to the squad for most coaches because of that versatility that you spoke about. Jason Curry, how are you, Jason? Said, hey Craig, I think Mo shines with VVD and wants to bring these new players to Champions League winners. This would be a great send-off for all senior players. Definitely, Jason, definitely. And I mentioned this a few times. Can you imagine the heartache of next summer if we had to say goodbye to Mo, Virgil, and Alisson all at the same time? You know, emotionally, I'd rather that staggered over the course of a season or two. But yeah, that would be a real end of the old era, like a proper end of that era. So wait and see what happens. Craig, can you break down step by step from you what Liverpool needs to do in order to be built stronger? A CDM back to win the treble or quad next season. Jaden, do you think honestly, but not being disrespectful, that I can sit here and break down every step that Liverpool need to do to win a treble? Like, I don't think that's possible for anybody. I can sit here and tell you what I think we need to do in the market, what positions we need to improve, whether I believe in the coach or not. But you know, there's a lot being asked from you there in that question, and we start off by making sure that we've got a good defensive base. That needs to be done. So we need to get the centre backs in. We need to get a CDM in, a proper CDM that can really shield that back four and help out. We need more versatility in attack. I think that's clear. We need a little bit more pace in attack. That's. I don't think we're too far away after that. You know, a centre back or two, a CDM, another attack and wide player, and I really don't think we're too far away. You know, building out the squad depth, as people have said, but that's where the likes of a Curtis Jones becomes important because of that versatility and ability to play in multiple roles. How many trophies do you think Liverpool win in the next 5 years? Tough to know, James, because, you know, there's so many variables in it. You know, what will Manchester City's situation be? Will Arsenal sack Arteta if he doesn't win something big this year? Is Arne Slot still going to be Liverpool coach next year? Are we in Champions League football next year? I mean, there's just so many variables. The aim should definitely be a minimum of one a season at a club like Liverpool. That should always be the goal. And certainly when we have the calibre of players that we have right now, we should be looking to be bringing in silverware every year. So over the next 5 years, six trophies minimum over 5 years. would be kind of where my head's at. And two of them maybe three of them should be big ones. And by big, I mean Champions League or Premier League. The major disappointment for me this year on a personal level has been how shitty our title defence has been. Because it really, really, really annoyed me, the disrespect that we've had for the two title wins. Like, it's really gotten under my skin. And part of the fact I'm so angry at Arna this year, and the club, is that I wanted a proper title defence. I wanted to shut those fans up that wanted to belittle our titles. And to go back to back would have shut them up. So the fact that we've unfortunately ended up in this situation where our league title defence has been nowhere near good enough, it's gotten under my skin a lot. And really, really taken the gloss off anything else this season. Because, it's not like we're sitting in second place now, 4 or 5 points behind Arsenal. We're in sixth place. And yes, it's close. And, a couple of wins could change and get you into the fourth or fifth spot. But it's still not a proper defence of the title. And, when we sat here in the summer and we were so happy and optimistic that, wow, we'd won the league and now we've built on that with these great players. Yeah, that's the big pain for me this year as a fan is how far removed we are. Like, real era-defining teams, they don't have fall-offs like that. You win, and then you go and you win again, and you win again, and you win again, and that becomes a habit, and that becomes the club's identity, and it becomes a methodology, and players come in, they know that that's the expectation. That's why I didn't like the way that we ended last year. I didn't think it was setting us up for that era of dominance mentality-wise. The little trips away at the end of the season and the fact that there was so much underachievement in other competitions. Like, right now, we don't know what the next round of the Champions League is going to bring for us. We don't know whether we'll book our passage through or not. So just imagine for a second if something went wrong and we did go out of the Champions League. The season then absolutely looks like a shit show. The longer that Champions League dream is kept alive, the longer our hope as fans is kept alive. Because an FA Cup win, albeit a trophy, it would still feel like an underachievement for us this season, based off the ambitions coming into it. Will Frimpong be available for Forest? Not that I'm aware of. Yeah, not that I'm aware of. I was looking at a piece today, I think it was in the Econ, they were talking about the likely comeback times for players, and unknown was the answer on Frimpong, if I remember correctly. They were talking about maybe April for Isak. I think it could be a little bit sooner than that, depending on if there's any reactions or any secondary injuries. We've seen him doing a little bit of ball work at the AXA. Leone, again, they're saying next season. Endo, manager said minimum a month, but again, we don't know the exact date on him. Pep and Arteta leaving the Prem would be a blessing in disguise, as they both introduce a style of play that makes the league so hard, said J. Bob Sad. But for differing reasons. I think I detest Mikel Arteta's brand of football. Like, I absolutely fucking hate it with every fibre of my being. It is anti-football, and it is... Look, it might win, it might bring success, but doesn't excite me as a neutral, let's say, watching games. I can't be bothered with it. And I really, really don't like him as well, so that doesn't help. Chelsea won it after finishing 10th, to be fair. What's that? You're going in reverse, though. I'm talking about us winning it and then falling off. So, yeah, there have been teams that have gone from a lower position right up, absolutely. But I was talking about us, defending our league title and doing it in a proper way. The Emir said, next time we win the league, don't change the shirt sponsor. Last 2 times we won, changed both shirt sponsors, were atrocious. Were we? Standard Chartered? We're being... shirt sponsors all the way through now for the league title wins. Bobby said, slot out, he ain't solving now. Look, right now, I would be in that camp still, yes. I would. I'm still to be convinced. Like, young George asked me in our Discord group, am I open to being won around? And for me in life, you got to be open to everything. You know, if you close the door on anything, I think you're just being foolish. But it's going to take quite a bit for me to come back around to be, you know, as enthused. And it certainly isn't going to be a victory over Newcastle, a win over Sunderland, and a weakened Brighton being beaten in the FA Cup. It's going to take more than that. It's going to take us to really stand up and be counted in games when it matters. I mean, whatever way we want to try and talk about this, we did still capitulate recently enough at the end of the game against Manchester City when we'd got ourselves into a really good position there with minutes to go, and we still somehow lost the game. Paul said, we knew there was a chance things wouldn't go too well this season with all the new signings. Slotting some of the Twilight Zone tactics had us pulling our hair out, but things are turning now. I hope they are. I disagree a little bit, Paul, and look, we all have our own... Oh, Poss, excuse me. We all have our own thoughts on what we expected in the summer, but I certainly expected a far better fist of things because I don't think we weakened ourselves more than we added quality. I think you can talk about depth, and that's fair enough. But again, looking at the caliber of players we brought in, I think it's fair to say if you were looking on an individual basis, they've been upgrades. I meant New Balance, Nike to Adidas. Oh, sorry. The kit manufacturers. Yeah, fair point on that one. Look, I want to stick them with Adidas now all the way. And have you seen that new tracksuit that somebody kindly said to me was available from the 18th? It's pretty nice. And there's a t-shirt, I think, to go with it as well. I mean, Man City, Barca, Bayern won the treble. We can. Yeah, of course we can, mate. But there's a huge difference in outside of Man City. You know, Barca and Bayern are playing in leagues with only realistically 2-3 teams that can win it. Of course we can win a treble, but you know, we haven't won the treble in my lifetime. So we've won a treble in 2001, but not the treble. So yeah, anything's possible, of course, but right now we need to just focus on making sure we're moving up that league table. A couple of more things I wanted to run through with you. I don't believe this link for a second, but I think it's calciomercado.com have said Liverpool are considering a £60 million move for Gelson Bremer as a potential replacement for Canade. The Brazilian is considered one of Europe's most elite and sought-after defenders. I feel like we're always linked to him, but isn't he like 27 or something now? 28? I really just don't see. I think he was at Wolfsburg or somewhere when we were initially linked with him, and he's gone to Juventus and we're still being linked with him. I just don't believe it, in all honesty. I just don't think it's one worth keeping an eye on. Let me get more of my notes open. Have you guys seen the comments from Cesc Fabregas, by the way? When I was reading this from the Daily Mail, it said, Como manager Cesc Fabregas brutally suggested one of his big-name stars, Alvaro Morata, should stop playing football after his red card against Fiorentina. Ouch. It's vicious. Torino, yes, you're spot on. Yep, you're spot on. Was he not at Wolfsburg once upon a time, no? You're spot on about Torino, by the way. Yeah, fair play. But was he not at Wolfsburg once upon a time? Apologies if I'm wrong on that, but you're spot on with Torino. As soon as I seen the comment, I thought to myself, yeah, spot on. David said, Craig, honestly, who would you like as new manager if Slot did go and be a success? There's Luis Enrique is the obvious one. After him, there's always the risk factor. if you were to bring in Alonso, yeah, of course, emotionally that's going to connect with Liverpool fans, but he still has some proving to do. You know, he hasn't managed in the Premier League, so you got to take that into account. But he would certainly come with a lot of goodwill from the fan base. After that, like the likes of Nagelsmann and stuff, wouldn't. Yeah, there's always going to be an era of doubt or an element of doubt when you look at a potential new coach. Because right now, you know, football's in a shifting landscape where the old guard of coaching is kind of, you know, the likes of Mourinho, Ancelotti, you know, they're kind of edging out of football, and you've got the new managers like Sebastian Hoeneß and other young coaches coming through. So, um, yeah, it's Enrique's the number one for me. After that, Alonso would definitely excite me, but I would be the first one to say to you that there is a risk factor involved with that as well. Alan said, I was so impressed with the signings this summer, but I was shocked we left it so late for a centre half. I thought we'd win the league again, or at least be challenging. Yeah, the centre back thing feels very, very strange for a couple of reasons. One, why did we leave it so late to go for Mark Gay in a position where we all knew we needed to bring in depth in? So, you know, even from a point of view of it doesn't give the manager a lot of time there to work with a new signing to bed him in. So you want the players in as early as possible. And I don't understand the whole situation with Mark Gay, right the way through from leaving it so late in the summer to not making a move in January. It feels like they were never really convinced by him. But if that's the case, is that more worrying? Because we were still making that move for him in the summer? You know, you'd like to think if he was the guy and he was numero uno on the list and everybody was in agreement, that would have been done. Because, you know, it's hard to believe that you couldn't get it over the line when you brought in Florian Wirtz, brought in Isak in a very difficult negotiation with Newcastle. Ekitike brought in. Yeah, it's a tough one to get your head around and figure out. Have we forgotten the invincible season with Leverkusen? No, not at all. That's the only reason he is being considered for the Liverpool job, is what he did with Leverkusen. Like, if he didn't do what he did there with Bayer Leverkusen, I don't think Xavi Alonso's name would be in this conversation for the Liverpool manager's job. You know, that season is what's put him on the map, really, with so many football fans. You know, he was pretty good at Sociedad with the B team. I certainly don't hold the Real Madrid thing against them. I've said this openly many times, but no, nobody's forgotten about it. That's the only reason he's in the conversation. Miro said Slot is not a likable character, and his disparaging comments towards the club fans and Klopp to me sums him up. There's no connection with the club fans or the city. Ultimately, mate, I agree with you. I agree with you on every point you've raised there. I don't think he's a bad guy. I don't for one second think when the doors are closed that you wouldn't have a good chat with him and he wouldn't be a nice, likeable fella. But there is something that I don't think really connects with Liverpool fans. And I don't think it's just that he isn't Jurgen Klopp. I know that there's been a bit written about that, but I don't think that's it. Like, everybody understood we weren't going to get another Jurgen Klopp. He is a once in a generation coach for us, and just a perfect cultural fit as well in every way. So I agree. I agree, mate. I think I tried to force my own love for Arne Slot in the first season, and it was pretty easy when you win the league title to be thinking, okay, well, maybe this guy does have something about him, and maybe he will. But ultimately, I found that when things didn't go this season how we would have wanted, I didn't have the same reserves of goodwill that I would like to think I would have for most Liverpool coaches. And I'm not just talking about Jurgen, because I understand coaches can come in and fail to some extent, and it's an up and down thing. But there's just something that doesn't connect me to him. Something that just feels sterile or forced. He just doesn't feel like. And I can't speak for all Liverpool fans. I'm only speaking for me, but that disconnect that we've spoken about a lot, I think a huge part of that has come down to some of the way he's approached press conferences and some of the very strange comments he's made. And I don't know. For me, I don't think that connection is there in the same. Well, of course, not in the same way as Jurgen, but I just don't think it's there. So I think you're right. Coleman said, "Hey Craig, how are you? Having a bit of a rough day. Sorry I was late. I'm good, man. I'm good. Thank you. Still working through some health issues that are slowing me down a little bit, but yeah, I'm okay. I hope your day gets better, man. I'm sorry to hear that you're not having a great day thus far." Anfield sector said Slot stay next season. Did they? Any reason for that, or like, I'm not saying they're right or wrong. I don't know. So I certainly wouldn't come out and say it. So if they've said it, well, bookmark it, because if they're right, fair play. If they've said it and they don't know, that's it's a big shout to make. I mean, I would go a little bit further and say, if he does stay, you would probably see an extension this summer for him. Because would you want to let a manager that you believe in go into the final year of his contract at your club? It doesn't seem clever. So if Liverpool are going to keep him on and truly believe in him and the project, then you'd have to imagine the contract extension will be on the table. So yeah, as I said, if they've said that, it's a fucking big call to make, because I certainly wouldn't be putting my neck on the line about it. LFC Spectre said, Slot's like a robot when speaking to the media and trying to celebrate with the fans after wins. We have a poll running, by the way, if you haven't voted, on will Dom sign a new deal. We're trying to figure out if the likelihood of that has increased or not. David said, I watch football and I study players, and he makes a lot of errors. With Palace, he was the standout player. That's why he was their best player. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. That's just not true. Sorry, man. I don't mean to have a pop with you, but it's just not true. If there's one thing that he is, it's consistent. And, he's dropped straight into that Manchester City team and made a difference there. So, I can understand concerns about his aerial ability. We've spoken about this before. He's not of the stature of a Canade or a Virgil van Dijk, so I wouldn't expect that type of dominance that we see with those two in the air. But, yeah, I mean, I think it's a stretch to say he makes a lot of errors, Mark Gay. Because another thing we need to remember about him is, in centre-back terms, Mark Gay is actually quite young. And Mark Gay, will still develop a little bit more as a centre-back till he gets to that 26, 27, 28. Zez said, Gakpo is holding us back. Right, so, I said to you earlier on, I have a bit of a theory on the Gakpo situation. So, I'm going to try and address it. I think that some of the grief that Cody Gakpo is getting this season is from the fact that there isn't another option. I don't think he's doing anything much worse than he was ever doing, but we don't have another option there. We don't have another bit of dynamic attacking ability on the left-hand side that the manager's willing to utilise in the same way we had Luis Diaz. It used to be you had both those options, and if one style wasn't working, you could make up the change and bring on the other. So I think some of the frustration aimed at Gakpo has come from an unfair place, because he's never been the thing that people suddenly want him to be. But what we're missing isn't what we're missing from him, for me, as much as it's what we didn't replace with Luis Diaz. That's my take on it anyway. And I'm not trying to say he's been the best player in the world or anything like it. But I certainly think the levels of grief he's been getting are over the line. I think it's been too much. Again, you might disagree, and that's absolutely fine. But yeah, Saunders said they deleted the Slock on a Stay comment. Well, I know social media and somebody will have screenshotted that. If you've seen it, somebody screenshotted it. So I don't know. Look, I don't know the guys at Anfield Sector on a personal level. And they're a great account. I will say that for them, an absolutely brilliant account. But if that's a big claim to make. James Brennan said, totally agree. People are pissed with Gakpo because we're seeing week in, week out instead of being able to change it up. That's my take on it. I look at Gakpo, I think he's always chipping in with numbers, like I said. He's never been what people are asking him to be. And I describe Gakpo in the podcast as the kind of forward you utilise in an away game in Europe, where you want somebody who's tactically astute, somebody who can defend a little bit, somebody that might pull something out, but ultimately keep it tight. Whereas you want a Luis Diaz or a Rio Engamoa, when you're at home, you're playing against a low block and you need somebody to create something or force an issue. And I don't think Gakpo's that kind of winger. So that's my take on it. Like I said, open to people differing, but that's why I think some of the grief he's getting this year has been a bit unfair. I'm not saying he's been brilliant, by the way. I've gone in on him on occasion, and I've certainly been frustrated by him turning right. But it's just that there's no other option. Craigo needs news on Yan Diomande. The situation with Yan Diomande is that there's a lot of clubs in from, as Romano said. Bayern Munich, Premier League clubs. Diomande, and I spoke about this earlier on, he clarified his comments on Liverpool being his dream club by saying, people made it out to be my dream club, but first and foremost, it's my dad's favourite club. It was always his great wish to see me there someday because he loves the atmosphere at Anfield. He's always raved about Steven Gerrard. I was too young to see him play. We didn't even have a TV at home for a long time. I have a lot of respect for Liverpool, but my dream club right now is Leipzig. So, look, I totally understand him saying the dream club is the club he's at. That's, good PR. But he seems to be somebody that's attracting a lot of interest from top clubs, so keep an eye on it. And, as Romano said, they haven't set a price tag yet. There's been talk of over €100 million, but let's wait and see what happens. Jaden said, real learning from both Salah and Gakpo, good to see. Yeah, absolutely. Like, it must be an absolute dream for a youngster like that to look around and see, Mohamed Salah there, Cody Gakpo, Isak, all the forwards, Florian Wirtz even, I'm sure. There's so many things that in his game that we're just all excited to see. And maybe I'm a little bit impatient. I want to see him a little bit more, a little bit quicker. So I'm missing some of the stuff in the chat and I don't know what's happening. So that United account said I made a common sense point, grow up. I don't know if that's aimed at me or somebody in the chat because I don't know what the conversation's about there, mate. Do you think Slot stays next season? And if not, who do you think replaces him? I think whether he stays next season or not will come down to what he does for the remainder of the campaign. If he pulls the Champions League out of his backside, how can you fire a manager that's won a Premier League and then a Champions League? It would be madness. So, let's wait and see. We know we've had a few decent results, but we've got some tough times ahead, some tough games to come, and some easy games. And you looked at the 4 league games now, and if we're not picking up 10, 12 points from those, then we're not performing the way we should. They're very winnable games. On top of that, we'll find out who our opponents are in the 5th round of the FA Cup tomorrow. Then it's just a matter of making sure that we're progressing and getting better week on week. It's a good moment, and it's certainly better than sitting here talking about losses like we were. But I'm also not of the mindset that everything's great now. I'm not there yet either. Apparently, we're in a battle with Man United for Mateus Mane from Wolves. Yeah, on that, I've seen a few links to us on Mateus Mane. I think he shares an agency with Welody Lucky and another one of the younger players at Liverpool as well. So Liverpool have good communication with that agency. But hand on heart, if I'm representing him, I'm telling him to stay another year at Wolves, come what may. You know, they're going to go down, but I think he should stay there and continue to play week in and week out. The big moves will be there from. And, you know, there's nothing more frustrating than watching a footballer go from a team like that to somewhere where you know they're not going to play. You know, sometimes you need to be a bit patient and know that you're good enough and that big move will come. So if I'm representing Mateus Mane, I'm saying stay put, mate, and keep playing, keep doing what you're doing, and clubs will always be there looking for you. Ezekiel said, "Hi Craig, sorry I couldn't get in earlier. What's the situation with DIOMANDE? I think he's class." Situation basically is that the race is heating up for a signature, mate. Romano said earlier on, FC, Bayern, and Premier League top clubs will be in a battle to sign Diomande in the summer. Leipzig yet to decide on a final price tag, but Bayern are keen. Vincent Company also appreciates Diomande. Premier League clubs very keen also. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at with his situation. Right, I want to just fly through this poll. So if we get 150 more votes, we'll move on, because I wanted to get your thoughts on what happens with Curtis Jones. And I want to get your thoughts on what you think happens with him and his contract situation. LFC Adzi said, "Hey, legend. Thank you. Appreciate the kind words. Something tells me, based on the round table and Slot's comments about Jurgen's bad season with injuries, where we didn't qualify for the Champions League, he knows he's staying regardless of outcomes." Maybe. I wouldn't say I agree with your thought process, but I can see where you're coming from. I would say he's more trying to justify the underperformance this season by saying even the great Jurgen Klopp, XYZ. But I don't think that's going to do him any favours. I think the last thing he should be doing is talking about anything about what Jurgen did, good, bad, or indifferent, because he ain't Jurgen, and nor does he have the same buy-in or admiration from the fan base. But, you know, we've talked quite a bit and will talk quite a bit about his future, but he's not the only one in a precarious situation. You know, Richard Hughes, Michael Edwards, their contracts are also in the same boat. At the end of this season, they all have 1 year to run. And there was a report this week from Saudi that Al Hilal are looking to make Richard Hughes their new sporting director. And I've not really seen too much more on this story other than that publication in Saudi putting it out there. So, yeah, I know we focus obviously on the head coach position, but we've only just got to a point where we've got a sporting director back in after the Schmatke Klopp experiment, and it's been less than 2 years. So there's conversations to be had for all three of those positions, you know, the CEO of football, the sporting director, and the head coach. So all of their futures will have to be resolved. Love you, Craig, brother. The LFC streaming go. That's so kind of you. What's an aider? Thank you, man. Appreciate the kind words. Why doesn't Mo ever get the same grace as Ali or Virgil? Proper weird the way some of our fans treat him. Maybe it's because the high standards he set. He's popularised the term goals and assists for a winger. I don't know. I don't know where you're coming from with that one, mate, to be honest. I don't know anyone that doesn't rate Mo. You know, it's very difficult because that's how, you know, forwards or wide players or attackers get measured, is in goals and assists, you know. If we keep a clean sheet, we're going to subconsciously think the defence has done good. Virgil's done well. And Alisson, look, they're all difference makers. The three of them, for me, are the three pillars of the successful era we've had. That spine of the team. Alisson's been the best goalkeeper of my lifetime. Mohamed Salah has been, without a doubt, the best wide player of my lifetime at Liverpool. And as you said, kind of reinvented the whole way of measuring the ability of wide players with goals and assists. And then Virgil van Dijk, without a doubt, was being the best centre-back at Liverpool of my era. And I'm talking about Sammy Hyypiä there as well. It was absolutely top quality. I didn't get to see Alan Hansen. I missed the end of his career, but yeah, other than that, mate, I don't know. But I think Mo certainly gets loved by Liverpool fans, and rightly so. Gakpo out, Rio in. Also, Pep is available in the summer. But Gakpo out and Rio in still leaves us short. You're still going to have to find another winger. So I would say Gakpo in, Rio in. And let's get back to that situation where we have two different types of left winger. One, young, pacey, run at people, tricky. The other, a little bit more tactically astute. Both of them know where the net is. So have both and let them fight it out. May the best man win, or may the best man win for the right circumstance. That's why I said it so many times last year, but I love the balance on the left because we had the best of both worlds. You had Luis Diaz, Cody Gakpo, and between them, pretty much every dynamic you have covered. Do I think Salah is finished? I wouldn't ever use the term finished to describe somebody that's had the career he's had. But is he on the decline? Yes. And I think, look, he's human. So he's going to be at 34. I don't know anybody at 34 who's the same player that they were at 27, 28. So, yes, he's on the decline. But I think the question is, will his input on the team dwindle? And has that dwindled in what he can bring to the team to push us on? And I think what he's lost in some ways, he's gained in others. He's lost a yard of pace, but his ability to spot a pass and his understanding of movements and small things better. As the season's gone on and he's, started to build some relationships with the newer players, you've started to see improvements as well. And again, I come back to the point where we said the whole point of the summer transfer window from an attacking perspective to bring in Wirtz, Isak, Ekitike was to take the burden off Mo. So he shouldn't have to score every 2 minutes. So, Ronaldo was... No, he wasn't. Ronaldo went from being a winger to a centre forward. So he absolutely wasn't the same. You might say his output was the same. But he changed positions, as did Leo Messi. Messi drifted a little bit deeper, became a bit more of a playmaker. So Mohamed Salah, I said this a few times, he could have potentially made that adjustment that Cristiano Ronaldo made into the centre. He probably doesn't have the aerial ability that Ronaldo has, but certainly had the eye for goal. Right, only need 10 more votes, and then we can close off the will Dom sign a new deal. And thankfully, this has been a positive response to it because I was a bit nervy about how people are going to feel about this one. What's my problem with Real Madrid? Do you have an hour? Because honestly, I could sit here and talk about it for an hour. I just think they're a soulless club, mate. I just think they're a pampered, soulless, spoiled bunch of brats. Simple as. There's nothing likeable about that football club. From Florentino Perez right the way down. From the way their fans act, from the entitlement, from the special treatment they receive. I could sit here for hours and hours and hours going on about it, mate. Just not for me. Right. So, 88% of people think Dom will sign a new deal. Thank you very much for that one. So, let's ask this one. Right, so rather than say, do you think on this one, I want to ask, do you want Curtis Jones to extend his deal? Let me know what you think on that one. Again, not do you think it'll happen, but do you want him? How much is Szoboszlai worth? Oh, God. Without trying to be rude about it, if Declan Rice is worth £100 million after this season, Dominic fucking Rice. There you go. Declan Szoboszlai. Yeah, I think you'd have to put Dom into the category of 90 to 110. Enzo, Caicedo, Rice, they're all 100 million plus midfielders. Wirtz. So yeah, you'd have to put Declan Szoboszlai right up there. 100 million quid. But I don't want to find out. Dominic Rice, yeah, or Declan Szoboszlai. I don't want to find out is the most important aspect because I want him to sign a new deal and stay at Liverpool. Will Ekitike and Wirtz become our most iconic duo? No, not our most iconic, but they are certainly becoming very, very symbiotic. They definitely are on the same wavelength. And again, this is something we touched on in the podcast is the battle for Isak to get in now, because you can see not only is Ekitike thriving, but the relationships he's building up and the understanding with the likes of Florian Wirtz is it's great to see and it's undeniable. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting battle for Alexander Isak to get back in there and get game time. Would I take Vinny Jr. as a Mo replacement? I wouldn't take Vinny Jr. as a fucking Curtis Jones replacement. That's how little I think of Vinny Jr. And his antics. So, no, mate, I don't want anything to do with Vinicius Jr. I think he is a pampered, spoiled brat. Which again leans into my disliking of Real Madrid because that's the kind of vibe I have about them. Rodrigo, if we were talking about wide players, I would have been more accustomed to or more open to the idea of Rodrigo Goes. But I have absolute empathy, sympathy, and frustration with the racist stuff that's been aimed at Vinicius Jr. No footballer should have to deal with that. No human being should have to deal with that. And I will always stand with Vinicius Jr. on that. He deserves to be respected as a human being, first and foremost. His antics, his diva attitude, and the way he rolls around, I don't like it. But I detest the way he's been racially abused. I thoroughly... It just saddens me that racism exists in the world. Like, it just absolutely saddens me that people are... Look, if I'm going to give a footballer abuse, it's going to be because I think they're a shit player. Or I think they're play acting. The idea of judging somebody on their religion, their skin, their sexual orientation, it just wouldn't enter my head. Which is why I was so fucking angry at that whole numpty situation. Because anybody that knows anything about what makes me as a human being would know that there was no chance in hell that I was about to say the N-word. None. It's not in my fucking vocabulary to say it. So, yeah, that's why that situation really sent me into a spin. Because one, it was outrageous for somebody to hear me going, numpty, talking about a white referee, and tried to twist it to say I was trying to say the N-word and I was somehow racist. I mean, the whole thing was ludicrous, but it put me into a dark, dark place mentally where I didn't know if I was going to come out of it. To think people, after my 8 years of body of work on here, will think that of me. Like, you can think I'm a hothead. You can think I'm a dickhead. You can hate my opinion. You can think I'm a gobby fool. No problem. Understand why and how anybody would think that. But I'd like to think that over my 8 years on here, I've shown as a human being what type of person I am. And that really, really hurt me this year. Especially because it came from nowhere. Like, I didn't even know what it was when somebody said to me, but what's this? Like, I had to actually go and ask what it was because I didn't understand it. Anyway, let's get back to talking about Liverpool. So, on this list of valuations from Transfermarkt, they have Lamine Yamal, Erling Haaland, and Kylian Mbappe all at €200 million. I don't see that. I mean, right now, I think, based off my views on football, Lamine Yamal should be the most expensive player in the world, in my opinion. I'm not saying he's the best player in the world, but if you're talking about the future, the caliber, the quality, I think he should be above Haaland and Mbappe. Haaland's absolutely phenomenal as a goal scorer, no denying it. But the magic dust that Lamine Yamal has is fantastic. So for me, he would be more expensive than those. Pedri, look, what a player, what a footballer Pedri is, and for Pedri to be worth less, 20 million euro less than Jude Bellingham, that's that doesn't compute with me. I love Vitinha. What a player! How mad is it, Scott? That's Vitinha that didn't really get a look in at Wolves. It just goes to show, like, sometimes it's just the right time, the right environment, the right place for a player. Because, Vitinha, if you ask Wolves fans at him at the time, they weren't too happy with him, and now look at him. And you've rightly said he's one of the most respected midfielders there in Europe at the minute. Badruddin, good night to you, mate. Look, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to stay on. I'm really enjoying tonight's stream. So if you're going to stick with me, I'm going to stay on till 10:45. So, put the kettle on or whatever it is you want to do to relax this evening. Whatever it is that makes you relax. I'm here. I'm enjoying it. These are, as I keep saying, I love some of the quieter streams where we get to have a laugh and really get to know each other and properly get stuck into it. And stick with me if you're here for the next 45. I'm going to be around. What's the news on DIOMANDE? The news is, I guess, twofold, mate. Firstly, there's a quote from him that comes from Build, where he was clarifying his comments on Liverpool being his dream club. And he said, people made it out to be my dream club, but first and foremost, it's my dad's favourite club. It was always his great wish to see me there someday because he loves the atmosphere at Anfield. He's always raved about Steven Gerrard. I was too young to see him play. We didn't even have a TV at home for a long time. I have a lot of respect for Liverpool, but my dream club right now is Leipzig, which, again, I think is an understandable comment to make. On top of that, Fabrizio Romano said, FC Bayern and Premier League's top clubs will be in a battle to sign Yan Diomande this summer. RB Leipzig are yet to decide on a final price tag, but Diomande is keen. But Bayern are keen. Vincent Kompany also appreciates Diomande, and Premier League clubs are very keen. So, yeah, we'll have to wait and see what happens on that one. But, we've gone to battle with some of these clubs for Florian Wirtz and came out on the right side of it. So, who knows? Tony said, the whole reason I went to your last live show was to look you in the eye and see where you stood. Glad you proved me right. Thank you. Well, I don't know what I did to prove you right, but I've always said it, mate. I'm a pretty straightforward person. What you see is what you get. There's no hidden agendas or anything like that. And I talk about respect, and I try to walk that walk as a human being. I'm outspoken, 100%, but underneath it all, I'm a big softy, and I want to see everybody thrive and everybody be successful, and in this life, we only get one go at it. I want to see people happy, and I want to see people in thriving, loving relationships, and I want to see people be the best version of themselves, my man. So, yeah, look, pleasure meeting you at the live show, but I'm glad at least I didn't disappoint you in that regard. Feels like we're a feeder club to Real Madrid. What, genuinely, Mark? Why is that? Because Trent left. I'm not trying to be an asshole. I just don't know who else. Like, what else has happened that, Michael Owen went there, McManaman went there. I mean, we're going back a while. There's been one common thread with a lot of them, though. They want them on the cheap. If you look at the players who've left to go there, Owen, McManaman, Trent, they've got a common thread there. So Real Madrid have never really come in and thrown a load of money down on the table to take one of our star players out in the same way like Barcelona did with Phil Coutinho. So I don't think we're a feeder club for them. I just think some footballers, and we have to acknowledge this, will want the publicity, the PR, the limelight that comes with playing for Real Madrid. I wouldn't be one of those. I think they're a shallow existence, but would you take Tonali if it meant losing Maka? Ooh. It'd be something I'd certainly understand, but every fibre of my being feels that we're more likely to bring in somebody for that holding position that's English. I think we need to keep an eye on the homegrown quota. So if I had to put £100 down on the table now, I'd bet that money on Adam Morton becoming a Liverpool player. Anderson feels a little bit less likely. I think maybe Manchester City there, but for us, I just think I'd be very surprised if Adam Morton isn't a Liverpool player in the next 16 months or so. Probably this summer, in all honesty. We need a football consultant like Luis Campos. Do you agree? Well, no, because that's what Richard Hughes is there for. And Michael Edwards. Every club will have their own. Look, the problem I think in world football that doesn't get spoken about enough is the power of agents and their willingness and their ability to move players in a certain ecosystem to certain clubs that are willing to pay certain agents' fees and stuff like that. And I don't like the influence that those guys have on football. We've seen George Mendes as an example. There's lots of clubs that are in that ecosystem of using guest a few players and, paying a lot of money. And then there are others who are on the outside. So I think if we really want to start looking at some of the issues in football, the power of some of the agencies and the influence they have at certain football clubs is something I'd like to see looked into a little bit more. Do you see a world where Dom goes to Madrid? Oh, I hope not, mate, but could I see them wanting him? Yes. And this is a silly thing that doesn't have any scientific value to it, but could I see him in a Real Madrid shirt? Yes, I could. He looks like a Real Madrid type of player. You know the way some players, you just see them in a certain club shirt? Like, I could never have seen Luis Suarez in a Real Madrid shirt. He always felt like a Barcelona type of player. I've always said I could never see Jurgen Klopp managing Real Madrid. I could see him as maybe an Atletico Madrid. But Dominic Szoboszlai, if he went to Spain, I would see him in a Madrid shirt in my head. But my biggest fear now is that we lose him to Madrid. This next contract negotiation is pivotal. And right now, that should be the club's priority number one with regards to renewals. Getting Dominic Szoboszlai tied down to new terms. Maybe with the promise of the captain's armband when Virgil's time is up. But that got to be priority number one. Getting him signed up. Would you be surprised if Victor Pereira was sacked if Forest don't beat Liverpool next weekend? Forest owner is desperate man with his stars, will be going on the cheap. Am I right in saying that Vitor Pereira managed Olympiacos at one point? Because I think I heard one of the journalists say there was a pre-existing relationship between the two of them, and I think it was at Olympiacos. Because what Marinakis has done this year has been crazy, quite frankly. To have 4 coaches in one season at a club that's in the Europa League. Yeah, it feels strange. And I don't know how it works out for them, but I just hope we beat them next Sunday, quite frankly. And after that, look, it's not really my concern. He did work together with them. Yeah, well then at least they've probably an understanding or an expectation of what to expect from each other. We say one thing about Marinakis, he is decisive. Whether that's a good or bad thing, he is decisive and he makes his decisions quickly. Jaden said, I think it's because our season didn't go the same way last season is why the youngsters getting more time, especially the League Cup. Just the thought. Yeah, well, look, I think it's fair to say, Jaden, that the further you go in domestic cups, probably the more opportunity some of the youngsters are going to get. On top of that, mate, I would use yesterday's game as an example. There haven't been many times this season, let's say, where we've been 3-0 up at the 70-minute mark, where Arna could then go, right, Rio, you're on, Trey, you're on, Calvin, you're on. There hasn't been much of that. So that makes it more difficult then. And this is, we've had conversations about us being a second half team last year and whatever. And this is why I keep saying I'd rather we just have that intensity from the start, where we go out there and, put teams away and then make the changes. Then use the ability to bring on the younger players in a better environment. It just, that's been one of the disappointments for this season. But I've always understood and appreciated the difficulty for managers bringing through younger players at bigger clubs because the pressure's on. But he was brought in to do that. That was part of his remit, was to, bring through some of the club's academy talent and give them a pathway. And I think the criticism he's received for not doing that is fair. A lot of the stuff we can be divided on with Arna, but I don't think he has really progressed younger players since he's come in the 18 months or so he's been here. I could see Jones being like Henderson if he stays with more technical ability. Yeah, Curtis Jones is definitely a brilliant squad player and somebody who I'm sure coaches would love to have around because of the versatility. But I've been consistent about this. I've never looked at him as being somebody who will be in the best 11 ever at Liverpool. And after that, it's a question for him then. Would he be happy with playing, let's say, 35, 40 games a season in a few different positions, but not really being, the starting number 8? That's a personal thing for him. But for me, great squad player, great to have around, very versatile, but I just don't see him ever nailing down a place as being he's a guy in the starting 11 week in, week out. Would I rather City or Arsenal win the league? I get asked this question quite a bit, and people probably think it's a difficult one for me, but it's not. It's Arsenal every day of the week. And I've explained why loads of times. If Arsenal win the league, they won the league, fair enough. Fair and square, they won the league. Everything Manchester City have done, everything in my eyes is tainted. Every single bit of it. Until these charges disappear or they're held to account, I refuse to really acknowledge anything that they've done as being fairly earned. But I'm a sports person. I'm somebody who, played sport, loves sport, and part of being a sports person or part of being a fan of sport is accepting that sometimes you aren't better. And I've no problem congratulating a team that deservedly win a league title. And if Arsenal win the league title this year, I don't like the brand of football, I don't like the manager, I don't like the behaviour of some of their fans, and they'd be annoying as fuck. But that's supposed to be their job as fans. They're supposed to be annoying. And at least I could look at it and think, okay, they were a club who did it in the right way. They were a club who built towards it. They were a club who spent money that they were able to spend legitimately. And I'd have a begrudging respect for that. So I would certainly sit on here and congratulate them wholeheartedly on winning the league title in a way I just wouldn't do for Manchester City. The other side of that is that the kind of upside of City winning stuff is that nobody gives a fuck, And I think that's why a lot of fans are probably happy to see City win a title, is because we know no one gives a shit. We know that as much as they try to pretend they're sold out every 2 weeks and there's some club that the empty seats are there and it is a paper tiger. And I think deep down that's kind of where it sits, is that people are so unmoved by Manchester City, or just, that there's never been a real rivalry there. The media have tried to create one, but it's never been there. You just look at Man City and go, you're not United, you're not Everton, you're just this pumped up oil rich Wigan that came from a questionable place to get here. And that's it for me. That genuinely is where I'm at with it. You know, if we lost the league to any other team, Chelsea I have a few issues with as well. But ultimately, Arsenal done it in the rules. So congratulate them if they win it. You know, that's what sport's about. And with regards to their fans being unbearable, I'd like to think I was unbearable when we won the league. You know, I certainly was given as good as I was getting. So that's part of the banter that comes with being a fan. If your team wins the league, it's your time to be unbearable. It's your time to wind people up. Where I've had real issues with Arsenal fans is not giving us credit. That's not right. And I've said it for years. Either wanting the COVID season to be curtailed or trying to make out like we were the worst Premier League champions ever. That's shithouse. That's a lack of sporting integrity. That's just not right as a fan. You know? Team wins league, they deserve to win the league. You fucking give them their credit. Or don't dare call yourself a fan of sports because you're not. But ultimately, it comes down to the fact that it's not us. You know? And I wanted it to be us this year. Craig, it'd be funny if Arsenal bottled the league. Oh, yeah. It would. It definitely would. It really, really would. It would. I'm not going to sit here and say otherwise. If Arsenal somehow don't win the Premier League this year and don't win the Champions League, yeah, I'm definitely right there with you on that one. And it becomes unbearable for them at that point. Like, we all know what it felt like for us trying to get that title after 30 years. And Jurgen achieved it, and then Arne achieved it. But God, we know that pressure, the weight of expectation, looking around at other results, always on edge. You know, to get a title after not having one for so long, the mental stress and toll that takes on fans is crazy. And you can hear it. I mean, I remember one of the commentators or one of the pundits on Sky recently saying that it'd probably be better for Arsenal to be playing away from the Emirates for a while because you can feel the anxiety inside the Emirates during every single game. And that now with 4 points between them and Manchester City, that's, very, very much squeaky bum time. And if you think about this, we were minutes away from killing off that title race when we played Manchester City. You know, if we beat City that day, that's probably the final nail in their coffin in the title race. So, you know, that swing in our game probably reignited that title race. And now with Arsenal dropping points against Brentford, it's going to be nervy times at Arsenal. But yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, if they manage to, and look, you got to say bottle it at this point, right? Because then you are becoming a bit Spursy almost. And another thing that I think doesn't get spoken about enough, for all the plaudits and praise that Arteta gets, what has he won? Like, genuinely, what has he won? He won an FA Cup with Emery's team when he came in at the end of Emery's reign. After that, he's had 5 years of being backed in the market and underachieving. So this year feels like he has given every fibre of his being, and he doesn't give a shit how they win the league title, how defensive, boring, frustrating they are to watch. He just wants to get the job done. And if he doesn't do it, and I've said this consistently, they have to fire him. They have to. Because it becomes a massive psychological barrier at that point if they can't get over the line. And this is a team, by the way, in a club that's never won a European Cup, but is still being spoken about as the favourites to do it, and they've never achieved it. Brentford played amazing. They deserve to win versus Arsenal. Well, on that, let's give Keith Andrews some props on Brentford, because at the start of this season, many people were understandably concerned that Brentford could be in trouble. You know, Thomas Frank went off to Spurs. Keith Andrews got promoted up from set piece coach, whatever he was there, to head coach. You know, they lost more players. They lost Johan Visa. So, fair play. Brentford are such a well-run club. And, as an Irishman, I'm extremely proud to see what Keith Andrews is doing. Kelleher there, Collins there as well. Yeah, big props to Brentford and to Keith Andrews for this season. Billy said, according to Arsenal fans, he's won the most handsome manager in the league trophy. Handsome? Arteta? Look, maybe, ladies, help. I look, I don't know how that nasally Lego-headed man is good looking. I don't get it. Really, I don't. Like my wife, I'll be honest with you, my wife's always found Pep Guardiola handsome. But yeah, I'm fucking handsome. I'll defer to the ladies, or maybe to the gents who are, who are of that orientation. But for me, I don't know. I don't see the appeal. He's no Dominic Szoboszlai. Don't Arsenal still have to go to the Etihad? Yeah, they do. I think somebody said it was March when that was scheduled, if I'm not mistaken. Xavi is handsome, though. Oh, he's not just handsome, he's a dapper bastard. Xabi Alonso just drips class. Yeah, like, he nearly turned me, Alonso, in a suit with the sunglasses on. Like, I'm not going to lie. I've looked at that man in a suit and gone, that's not right. That's just not right. Like, the way they talk about sometimes somebody walks into a room and Alonso in the suit with the sunglasses on, there's just something that screams class about that. I don't know. Yurnan said, I'm so happy people are finally understanding why we praised Kelleher. They finally understand why we said he started on a decent club, just won't start over Ali. Happy he's getting his credit. I agree. And also saddened that we didn't keep him, or at least put a buyback in there. Because, I don't know how other people feel about this, but right now, if you said to me, you could have Mamardashvili or Kelleher, probably I'm going to say Kelleher. I can't lie, that's just how I feel. I want Mamardashvili to be good. I hope he could be good. He certainly has the potential to be good. But, yeah, it just feels... I just don't understand why we weren't willing to really back Queeveen to be the guy. I understand that, he wasn't getting ahead of Alisson, but how many times have we seen Liverpool sell players recently and put buyback clauses in it? But there's a sell-on clause, I think, in there, but no buyback. Unlike Jarell Kwanzaa, who, we do have an option there. Craig, I feel like we haven't properly replaced Trent and Luis Diaz. I feel like we haven't properly replaced Joel Matip and Jorginho Wijnaldum. If I'm being really honest with you, like, that's how far back I could go in thinking there were players who we haven't replaced. 100% we haven't replaced Diaz, though. You're spot on with that. Lamau said, Kirkes is a dog. He's the only I've constantly seen exhausting himself. He is an absolute workhorse, and yeah, he's really coming good now. Actually, on that, let's give you some words from our captain, who was speaking about Milos, and this is what he had to say. I think it's pretty clear you definitely see an improvement. He's still so young and is getting used to being a Liverpool player. It's a lot more than just kicking a ball on a pitch. Especially when the team has been inconsistent, it's not easy to play your best games. But with the help of Robbo and the rest of the team and his own development, I think he's making big progress. What I see is there's a lot to come from him to learn and improve, but that's a good thing. He just has to keep going. He has a lot of energy. He's young. When we were young, we were all full of energy. He's eager to learn. The price tag he can't do anything about. When I joined the club, I also had that. 75 million was a lot of money, but what can I do about it? And he's not wrong. I think, Kirkes is really now showing exactly why we paid the money for him. And I got to say, I never had any doubt that he would. I did know how long it would take. I wasn't surprised there was inconsistencies. But right now, he feels settled and a little bit less rash. And I get where Virgil's coming from. But this will only come with experience, and it is hugely different playing for Bournemouth in the Prem and playing for Liverpool in the Prem, where you're expected to win, or the demands are to win every game. But there's something about Milos that he just feels like the perfect left back for us. And yeah, here's to many more years ahead with him. He looks like a remarkably good and fit. And it doesn't surprise me that he had a career as an amateur swimmer or time as an amateur swimmer beforehand, because that aerobic capacity of his is phenomenal. And when I'd heard that he was quite an accomplished swimmer, that made sense. Got to understand he deserves to be number one, and he'd been our number two for a share of his younger years. In his 20s, he's obviously won first team football. Unfortunately, Ali never be dropped. I get that, but that's why I said the buyback option. You know, we put a buyback option into Jarell Kwanzaa's deal that comes active in 2027. Well, respectfully, why didn't we do the same for Kelleher? Because that's when Alisson's contract is up as well. And I totally understand Queeveen wanting to be a number one and go and play every week. He deserves that. But I feel it was an opportunity missed for us not to put a clause in there that we could maybe bring him back in 2027 when Ali's contract is up. And, you know, we didn't know what was going to happen with Georgie Mamardashvili. We have high expectations and hopes for him. But, yeah, it just feels like that was an opportunity for us missed. Lord Flab, that could be my name, eh? Lord Flab, said, we need Schlotterbeck, Bastoni, maybe a backup centre-back like Ordonez and somebody like a Rodrigo. Don't need a 6 if we utilise Endo. We absolutely need a 6, mate. Come on. Utilise Endo. Come on, dude. Respectfully, Endo's good, but we do need a 6 of a higher calibre. Schlotterbeck, Bastoni, I'm right there with you on. We need somebody like that. Don't forget, we have already signed Jeremy Jacquet, so we need to see what happens with Ibrahim Kanade. But most of what you've said, I agree with you on, but you lost me at the number 6 thing. Billy said, Craig, one thing I like about new players is they're all getting better by the month. Look at Wirtz, Kirkes, Frimpong. Fair play to the new lads. Hugo settled in quickly. Yeah, certainly some... certainly Isak, we haven't had a chance to see enough of to really gauge. But yeah, again, I agree with what you said. Somebody made a good point. Why didn't Georgie start? Mart, it is a good question, and I think a lot of us thought that he was going to start that game yesterday, because if you don't play him in that, when are you going to play him? You know, we're out of the League Cup, so obviously that's not an avenue. And how else are we going to know if Georgie's going to be up to it or not if we don't really play him in meaningful competitive games? So, you don't just want a goalkeeper there in case Alisson gets injured. You want to know that this goalkeeper can step up to become the guy when Ali leaves. And yeah, I think many of us were a little bit confused with why he wasn't playing yesterday. Lord Flab said Grav. Yeah, Grav's good, but again, it's about competition, isn't it? And the joy about Ryan Gravenberch is he can be a 6, he can be an 8, he can be an 8.5, and he doesn't have to be pigeonholed, but he's not a specialist defensive midfielder. And that's what I think we need. Somebody who that is them. That is their existence. That is what they do. That is, a Fabinho type. That's what they do. They're a disruptor. They win the ball, and then they distribute the ball. That's what I think we need there. And somebody with a good engine as well. So Gravenberch can, proven that he can do a job there. But the way the Premier League has gone this year, and maybe to travel a direction of football, I still think we need that out and out bona fide number 6. And again, competition, high caliber competition. We should try to have 2 players in every position. Are Liverpool not linked with a move for Anthony Gordon? There's certainly been some conversations in recent days about that coming up again. But I'll be honest with you, Michael, I don't want to go through another summer dealing with Newcastle and that bullshit. I know Tonali's name has been linked as well, but God, I had enough of the Newcastle situation last summer with the whole Isak thing. I don't want to be involved in one of those type of dramas again, where we have to listen to them. Wharton's passing will transform us, but not sure if he's physical enough. Again, it's a good point, but physicality can be coached in as well. Wharton, look, he seems like the one. If I'm guessing, and I am, Wharton feels like he's going to be the one, but we'll have to wait and see. Wharton feels like a good fit. He kind of gives me the vibes of a Liverpool player as well. Keane said if we signed Adam Wharton, I think he'd help with the progression from deep, but still doesn't offer the ball winning. Needed to play a sole 6 role. We'd need that ball winner next to him, same as Maka. Well, let me put it this way then. If we don't think Wharton is going to be that winner, the ball winner, I don't think he should be the guy. You know, because that's what we need. We need, dare I say, a Rodri type that sits there, yes, can distribute the ball, yes, can chip in with a couple and can play from deep, but ultimately we just need somebody there that's mopping up everything, sniffing out danger and, stopping some of these holes that are appearing in the middle of the park. Has to be Tonali, Prem ready. Oh, look, Tonali's a great footballer. And we've been linked with Tonali since he was at Brescia or wherever the club he was at before. He went to Milan. Yeah, good player. But again, feels like... Actually, while we're talking about Tonali and Newcastle, let me ask you a more wider ranging question. Do you feel that the Newcastle project is having a real wobble? Because there's been a couple of things that have come out in the media that almost suggest that the players that bought into the project haven't been overwhelmed with the way it's gone since they've gone there. Or they felt a little bit underwhelmed with the way the situation's been. I mean, look at Isak and him talking about broken promises. Then you've got Tonali, who's come in and his agent, offering him to Arsenal. Eddie Howe's position is coming under question. Newcastle this season look very, 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 very unlikely to be getting into Champions League football again. And then you're going into the situation with FFP and stuff like that once again. I wonder how long the Saudis are going to stay interested in that project, or whether it's been a little bit shallow on the inside. That's kind of the vibe that's coming out. I just don't really like Gordon's attitude, said Billy Beckner, nor do I think he's good enough. I feel like he's always at risk of getting a yellow or red. He doesn't even make up for that in goals and assists and performances. Look, I've always had a soft spot for Anthony Gordon. I don't think he's the finished product, but I think there's a lot there to work with. I do think the ship has sailed, since the summer where we almost signed him. But let's wait and see. Do you think Salah has to play differently, for example, playmaker? I think certainly as you get older and you lose a yard of pace, you have to reinvent yourself to some extent. I'm more interested to know, though, whether he heads off this summer or not. Because if he still feels like he has something to give in European football, I'd want that to be with us. But if he feels like he's open to a new chapter and, heading over towards the Saudi Pro League or the MLS, fair enough. But if he stays in Europe, I want Salah to stay with us. Sam said, I would love Elliot Anderson. Thoughts? We debated this on the podcast today. We all came to the conclusion that we think Wharton's more likely. Chris doesn't get the Anderson love in. I was probably a bit more sceptical till we played Forest, and I really had a good close look at Anderson. And since then, he's really impressed me. I just don't think it's a deal that's likely. Manchester City's name has been mentioned quite a bit. Marinakis, if they stay up, is going to be a difficult man to deal with to get him out of there. So I just think it's unlikely. But, every poll that we've ran on the channel where we've asked, which one of these two, Wharton's come out on top with Liverpool fans' opinion. I don't know. I like Elliot Anderson. I do. I think he's a really, really good, versatile, physical player. But I wouldn't be displeased with either Morton or Anderson. I think either one of them would be a good addition to the group. Keane said Anderson's the better player for me. Wharton feels way more likely. Is Newcastle so-called richest club in the Prem? Well, they're richest because they have the whole Saudi investment fund behind them, but they can't use that money without breaking rules. So they're kind of somewhat hamstrung with what they can spend financially without getting into trouble. Don't forget that anchoring is coming in at the end of this season, so the way football clubs calculate their spending or it's measured is going to be a little bit different. So we're all going to have to get used to that again. What else we got? Newcastle have deeper problems. Its under 21s is not great and doesn't have enough players. Newcastle suffer with a lack of depth all around, and that's its problem. They also need to sort out St James's Park as well. There's talk about extending that. It feels to me from the outside, and of course I am on the outside, that the Saudis usually want to attach themselves to winning and to projects that they can throw money at in a quick vein of time and turn around. Like they came in and basically took over boxing to an extent, and they tried with Live Golf, and they've had an impact there. With Newcastle though, they haven't seemingly been able to really do what they would have liked to have done since they've come in, or maybe what Newcastle fans would have dreamt about when they got taken over. Can you explain it again? What is anchoring? I don't have enough information to hand to properly explain it to you, but basically, clubs are only going to be able to spend a percentage of the lowest club's revenue or something like that. I will go through it all with you before the season's over and the summer when I'm a little bit better up to speed on it. But for now, I wouldn't be confident enough in my understanding of it to explain it. Right, our poll. So we asked, do you want Jones to extend his deal? 90% of people said yes, they do want Curtis Jones to extend. So thank you to everyone that took part in that. Right, folks, we've about 5 minutes left tonight, so do keep your comments coming in. Don't forget to enter a giveaway, by the way. We're giving away a signed Jurgen Klopp frame shirt completely free. Scan the QR code on the screen or use the link in the description for further details. We're going to be giving away one signed item every single month throughout 2026, with thanks to our friends at the Collector's Corner. You can also treat yourself to 20% off, as many of you already have, and thank you to those that have used the code, to treat yourself to 20% off anything at thecollectorscorner.co.uk by using our code Anfield Agenda 1 at checkout. And next month, well, I know what we'll be giving away, but I can't tell you just yet. Last month we gave away a signed Steven Gerrard frame shirt. This month it's Jurgen Klopp. And again, thank you to our friends at the Collector's Corner. You will see a lot of their stuff hanging up in the new studio. Baxter said, do you think that if we keep Ibu, that we should still go for a Schlotterbeck or somebody a touch cheaper like Van de Ven? If we keep Ibu, we've got Jeremy Jacquet coming in. We've got Giovanni Leone. I still expect Gomez to move on this summer. Yeah, I would be looking for somebody ready to come in straight away. So somebody probably 25, 26. Schlotterbeck, Bayern are interested in him. Madrid are interested in him. There's been a bit of chatter recently about Madrid being willing to pay the money. But you're spot on with the type of player you're talking about. I think if Canada stays, we've got himself, and then we need another here and now centre back with the younger centre backs then in Leone and Jacquet. I'm excited to see Leone back in the summer. I feel like we were really robbed of an enjoyable season from him. We only had 80, 85, 87 minutes of seeing him in the League Cup, but he looked the part. VVD retiring. Yeah, VVD, as we know, has 1 more year with the Reds before his contract's up. So, as I said, if Canade stays, it gives us a bit more breathing room. You've got Xhaka already done and dusted. You've got Leone coming back in. Virgil's here for 1 more year. If Canade stays, then there's a bit less pressure on the recruitment there at centre back. But 1 more probably do no harm. What have we got? Would you take Marmoush from City as Salah's replacement? So I wouldn't take him from City now, but I would have taken him before he went to City. Yeah, I just think with the money he's getting at City now and stuff, it's in silly territory. 300 grand a week or so is just fucking ridiculous. So, no, I wouldn't take him now, but I would have taken him beforehand. David, so Craig, I wish you and your family well. I've enjoyed it tonight. So have I, mate. Thank you. That's very kind of you. Same to you and your family, David. Appreciate you, mate. I understand why Rio is not starting anymore. I'm pretty sure it's because Rio's not as strong as Cody. And yesterday, what we saw was the defenders just slightly leaning into him. And it muscle him. Look, that's a fair comment. I think you will see him get stronger as he gets older. But I think what we also seen yesterday, to kind of go in the other direction, was a youngster without fear. And a youngster that, was finding space and slipped into the game nicely and was unlucky not to get himself a goal. So it's a fair point you've made, but still think we should be giving him a bit more time. But maybe results haven't gone in the way that the manager would have wanted to have the ability to give him a bit more playing time. I believe Virgil will extend for a further year at Liverpool. All this talk of being finished, not from you, is nonsense. Look, I absolutely believe Virgil van Dijk can play till he's 36, 37. I wholeheartedly believe that, especially as a centre-back. So if he extends, or if Liverpool find a way to extend him, happy days. Let's wait and see. Look, ladies and gentlemen, really enjoyed tonight. Thank you. I will see you tomorrow. Connor's away for a few days, so I don't think you'll be seeing Connor's news videos in the morning. So you'll have to be just putting up with me for the next 3 days. I'll be holding down the fort, but I'll be here with a news video tomorrow early evening. We'll have a late night agenda tomorrow night as well. The Anfield Agenda podcast, I believe, is out now on Spotify, so do check that out, and there'll be a few clips from that coming up on YouTube. But really, really enjoyed tonight. Thank you. It was lots of fun. Appreciate all of your time, all of your comments, and of course, all of your support of the channel. I will see you tomorrow. Take care. Have a good one.